Hello and welcome. If you are new, welcome back. If you're returning to this channel, I'm Dr. Kelli Ritter, and I am going to talk about my pro-healing diet in this recording. So it's really pro-healing nutrition. It's an approach or a way of eating, but I created a blueprint of a PhD, which is a pro-healing diet. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, just very high level overview of what that even means. So for this video, it is sponsored by Viva Rays. I'm a huge fan of blue blocking glasses, and these are really funky. So if you haven't figured out that light is fundamental to our health, then you don't follow me. So really utilizing the sunlight as a nutrient is step one. But step two is to really be protective of your indoor lighting. So making sure that you're blocking junk light, junk blue light specifically. So these Viva Rays are the clip and go, which is really kind of funky because they literally clip on. So yellow is for, sorry, you can see my big window in the reflection there. Yellow is for daytime. And then you take the orange and you clip those on, and that's for after sunset. And then at night, I put the red, you can clip on your red before bed. So about an hour before bedtime, it helps release the melatonin. So especially if you're still on some kind of tablet or iPad or watching TV or something, I wear the red. It does take some time to get used to, but the Viva Rays are very cool, and you can store them in this funky little container that it comes in. So if you're interested in checking them out, they are a great company, vivarays.com. And if you would like a 15% discount, you can use the code NOURISHED. So happy healing, and I hope you enjoy this video about pro-healing nutrition. Okay, so what is a pro-healing diet? Well, it's an approach actually, but my pro-healing diet is a blueprint that I created for clients. So it really came out of years of working with people and continuing to put together information and handouts for people and then getting information back. I also spent, and I still do this, but I really spent a good amount of time interviewing people who had healed their mental health specifically with nutrition. And so some of those are actually on this YouTube channel. You can see some of those interviews, but I was doing those interviews before I even thought about recording them. So, because I was gathering information on what was going to be the most healing way of eating for people, for metabolic health, but particularly for brain health and for mental health. So I'm very much interested in gut health, because most of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. And so when we heal the gut, we often see huge improvement, not just in digestion and in restorative sleep, but also in brain. And so less brain fog, less moodiness. And then, of course, I specialize in anxiety relief, so natural anxiety relief, and also with depression. So what is a pro-healing diet? Okay. I think the best place to really talk about it, because it's really more of an ancestral seasonal approach, and it's meant to heal the gut. So the focus is on healing our gut, but also supporting our mitochondria, because healthy mitochondria drive health. Unhealthy or they really kind of get swollen actually when they're dysfunctional. So mitochondria that are dysfunctional lose a lot of electrons. That is actually reactive oxygen species, which is inflammation. So dysfunctional mitochondria drive disease. So really at the very core basic level, we are providing cellular healing. And so that's going to be helping the mitochondria. But at the same time, it's very gut healing, and then it helps the brain as well. So heal the gut, help the brain. That's what we're trying to do on a pro-healing diet or a pro-healing approach to nutrition. So it's really based on my own experience clinically, my own experience personally, and then of course, all of my research. And so working on coming up with something that's actually sustainable for people and is not dogmatic. So I am not dogmatic about my approach at all. This is your life, and we're often very connected to our food. So we want to make small changes that are going to make a big impact. Of course, some people come and they're like, let me have it. I want to do the whole thing. Okay. So step one is really to use the sunlight, to start thinking of sunlight or light outdoors as a nutrient, because those, the frequencies of light, that is information that's super important for our body, very important for our mitochondria to figure out where it is in time and space and seasonally. So then your approach with food is also going to be supporting the mitochondria, healing the gut, and helping the body orient to time and place. That's why we use an ancestral, more seasonal, local food, if at all possible, because locally grown food, if you're going to eat carbohydrates, if you eat locally grown food, it's going to be providing information through photons for your mind, for your body, for your cells. And so I know that gets a little complicated. I give free workshops every single month on pro healing nutrition. I think it's so important. I want to make sure that people have access to that information. And so that's just a free workshop. You can go to my website, nourishedsoul.com. So nourished-soul.com. And you have to register so that I can send you the link. I don't think that automatically puts you on the mailing list. You can certainly unsubscribe if it does, but I don't mean for it to. I'm not trying to sell you anything or anything like that. I just want people to understand how to use a pro healing approach for nutrition. So it's really this ancestral. It is, I recommend people do 60 to 100% of their food by volume coming from animal sources. I'm very sorry to my plant-based friends. I promise I'm not dogmatic, and this is not my personal opinion. It's just where I've seen the most healing, particularly for the gut. But also we focus on quality protein and quality fat. And then we play with the carbohydrates depending on the person and how much healing they need and what they're willing to do and that sort of thing. But those are the macronutrients that were also hydration. I would say water is really important piece of the picture too. But with food, it's going to be, we're looking at protein, we're looking at fat and carbohydrates. So we really focus on quality protein and quality fat because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And animal sources of fat and protein are going to have more bioavailable nutrients. So it's really a nutrient dense approach to eating that's going to be super supportive to healing and to orienting your mitochondria, but also gathering electrons. So electrons are most available in fat. So healthy fats, fats that come from good sources are tallow, which is beef fat, pork fat, which is lard, duck fat, which is yummy and amazing and also really nutritious. So using butter or ghee, things like that. You could use more coconut oil. That is also a good source, and it's a plant source. For those of you who are like, okay, what are the plant sources? My clients do fine on some avocado oil and olive oil. I don't, recommend that you do a lot of cooking with those. That's better to cook with the animal fats. So some duck fat, butter, ghee, tallow, certainly. Those kinds of fats are going to be better for you to cook with those. But you want to eat nutrient-dense foods, steak, salmon roe, liver. Beef liver is one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. Eggs, so the egg yolk is super nutrient dense, nutrient-rich. So those kinds of foods, I'm a big fan of seafood because it's full of DHA, which is an essential fatty acid. So we're focusing on these essential amino acids and essential fatty acids. And DHA is really protective. It's important for brain function, but it's also the most DHA that we have in the body is stored in the retina and the eye, or it's found there. I assume it's stored there. It's found there. And so it's a really important piece to the whole puzzle because you want that DHA if you can get it. And the best source is from seafood. So if you can tolerate seafood and you can have seafood, now that's the one thing that people are like, well, wait a minute, you just told me I'm supposed to eat, seasonal local food, and I'm nowhere near anywhere that has fish. I'm in the middle of the United States or whatever it is. That's the one thing that I would say to make an exception because the DHA is so important. And sardines, which are really nutrient dense. And so I just eat sardines. I eat them out of the can. Not that that's super like the most healthy thing either, but I'm so convinced that the DHA is important that I'm willing to get it any way I can. So I live in Florida, so I can get fresh. I have a fresh fish market right outside of my neighborhood. Super lucky there. But if you don't, get wild caught fish if you can and eat some of that because it's so protective to the brain. Okay. So that is really the approach. If you're like, well, wait a minute, I need to know more about what I should eat or shouldn't eat, please come join one of the free workshops so that you can learn more details. I just wanted to give you kind of a highlight overview that it's not just about adding things in. When I first started teaching gut health in probably like 2016, and I was saying, it's about adding in the gut healers like probiotic foods, like fermented veggies, sauerkraut and that kind of thing, bone broth, which is very healing to the gut. It's also very high histamine. So if you're somebody who feels like you have a lot of histamine reactions to things, that you might want to do some healing and then add the bone broth. So those kinds of things, bone marrow is also very healing, helpful for the gut. But I have found that you have to take the gut detractors out for a period of time. Like you just aren't going to heal deeply if you're not taking those out. So those, of course, are any processed foods. We already know that the processed stuff is not good for us, but sometimes we still do it. But also just thinking about food as information. So you're starting to think about, oh, these electrons are important, but also the food is information. And it can also, it's nutrients. So you want the nutrient density of the food. But thinking about it in terms of information, if you're opening packages for your food, like pastas and breads and those kinds of things, that's going to be quite confusing to your mitochondria. Not going to be able to figure out what season you're in and when. And the reason that's important, remember, it drives healthy mitochondria, drives health. But it's also super important because the mitochondria are really good at sensing, but when our environment and picking up on things, but when our environment's off, our whole system is then going to be off. All of our circadian rhythms. So things when hormones are supposed to get released, and when they're supposed to get made and that sort of thing, all of that gets it just gets screwed up. So we want to help our body as much as possible by eating whole, real, fresh food. That's the place to start, is whole, real, fresh food. If you can get seasonal food, that's great. If you can base a lot of, like by volume, at least 60% of food that you're eating is coming from animal sources of these whole foods, really, you're getting more nutrients, better bang for your buck. Not my personal opinion. It's just a fact that those nutrients are going to be more bioavailable. A lot of people have absorption issues. So it's not that they're eating pretty healthy food and they're exercising, but it's really going to be more about when you eat too, and not just what you're eating, but it's also about being able to absorb those nutrients. And so that's where that comes in. Okay, so we're going to add in the healthy stuff. We're going to focus on, really good protein, really good fats. You're playing with your carbohydrates to figure out what whole food plant sources work in your body for your carbohydrates. And it's totally fine if none of them do and you want to cut them out completely. That is actually perfectly fine. And a lot of people have to do that in order to completely heal. Who knew? Certainly not me when I first started teaching this. I was just as shocked as some of you are. Was completely surprised that the plants can actually be a problem and cause problems in absorption, but also in what we call anti-nutrients. So some of these plants have natural defense chemicals because the plant doesn't want to be eaten by the animals. And some people, that's not a big deal. They process pretty well. Others of us, it's just too much of a toxic load and we're not absorbing the nutrients. It's preventing us from absorbing the nutrients. The exception there is fruit, because fruit is the part of the plant that wants to be eaten. And so that spreads the seed. And so some people can tolerate fruit and some people really cannot. And some people have to do some healing first and then add it in. If you're going to eat fruit and you're going to practice that, I say no naked carbs. So have some fat and protein with those carbs. And if you're going to eat fruit, really focus on seasonal fruit. If you can, locally sourced, really going to give your body better information. I'm not going to go into deuterium, but if you're eating fruit that's out of season, particularly if it's, you're eating, pineapple and you're nowhere near anywhere where pineapple grows, it can be very confusing to your body. And it can also increase something called deuterium, which we have deuterium in us. It's in the environment. But when it's really high or it's in the wrong season, so it's not matching the sunlight that you're getting and your outdoor time and the other inputs into the mitochondria, when it's not matching, then it can increase aging people. Like you rapidly age. It can increase weight gain too, and other things that a lot of people don't want. But most people don't realize that that's even an issue. They're eating their kiwi and they don't live in New Zealand. Or they're eating pineapple because they think it's healthy for them when it's actually completely out of season and creating problems. So the gut detractors, right? So you already know the sugar and the processed stuff. So some people are like, what about natural sugar? Some people, yes. Some people, no. For healing, you want to lay off of sugar as much as you possibly can, particularly for the gut healing. It's very disruptive to the gut. So the processed seed oils, oh Lord, if you don't stop anything else, please stop the seed oils, because we are getting more and more evidence that that is what's actually really detrimental to our health. So those are all the vegetable oils, right? The canola, the sunflower, safflower, soy oils, those kinds of things. You want to stay away from all of that sort of stuff. Alcohol, caffeine. Caffeine is a drug, so use it if you're going to drink caffeine or use caffeine. It's not a beverage, so use it appropriate or use it as such. But if you're really trying to deeply heal, you want to cut these things out. Alcohol, sugar, processed carbs, grains, really difficult on the system. Much easier to heal if you can cut out grains, particularly gluten, especially if you have anxiety. So high anxiety or chronic low-grade anxiety, caffeine and gluten are the two things that we find matter the most or help the most if people cut that out. What else? Soy. Some people can do dairy. Some people cannot. Some people feel like they need to back off of dairy while they do some healing. So those are the kind of the major gut detractors. And so you want to really kind of shift your thinking. What I recommend is that people don't do anything different for 2 weeks, and you just support your circadian rhythms and you get your light environment right. And you start there for like a couple of weeks while you wrap your brain around what does it mean to do this pro-healing way of eating? How long do I want to do this? Some people will commit to, 6 weeks. Some people will commit to 3 months. I really recommend 3 months, because that's where you're going to see a bigger difference, I guess. And then you can pick and choose and start to add things back and see how it goes. Hopefully this is making sense to all of you. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's really important about pro healing. I mean, supporting your circadian rhythms, it can really be about when you're eating as much as what you're eating. So shifting to earlier, because a lot of people are really into intermittent fasting or a fasted lifestyle. And if that's working for you, that's great. What happens when people are trying to heal is that actually ends up causing us some problems. Now, there are practitioners that will say that you need to be doing that in order to heal, but I've actually found the opposite, that people need to shift so they can still fast, but you're fasting in the evening, so afternoon and evening, when you would naturally be in autophagy, which is about 2 a.m., when your body's naturally cleaning itself. And so we just shift their window, their eating window earlier. So they're eating within 30 minutes to an hour after sunrise. They're having some breakfast. It doesn't have to be a huge breakfast, but really you're really focusing on quality protein and quality fat, no naked carbs for that first meal. And then nutrient dense foods, that's the best time to really get in some of that. And usually 3 meals a day is what most of my clients do best on, and to work their way off of snacking throughout the day. But some of my clients, we have to work our way there. And if they didn't snack, they really wouldn't eat much of anything. And so we add and we keep the snacks. But if you can do that, and you want to stop eating as close as you can to sunset, so no more food after sunset. Of course, you can drink water. You could have some herbal tea if you can tolerate that. But people are like, well, what about my wine? Or what? I drink a glass of wine when I get home from work. I mean, it definitely it's an adjustment. I get it. And it's a commitment. It really is. And it's a commitment to healing. And so you get to decide how much of it you want to do and how much you don't. Again, I'm not dogmatic about it. I think you have to, make small adjustments and that work in your life. And if you've got a really big health issue that you're facing, then of course you're going to do more. I think the only other thing that I would talk about is sometimes people are like, well, what about ketosis? You are going to heal deeper and faster if you're consistently in ketosis. And nutritional ketosis, a whole foods ketogenic diet, can be fantastic for mental health. We have more and more research on that. It's very clear. I do not recommend a ketogenic diet for somebody who has had a history of anorexia or currently, or really restrictive eating. Then you want to work with a practitioner if you want to, not that you can't do a lot of healing, but you just want to be cautious around that. And a lot of my clients don't even want to worry about the whole ketosis. They just want to slowly work their way into feeling better. I work a lot with people who they've done some things with their diet. They eat pretty well and they're exercising, but they still feel like shit. Or they don't feel great. And so those are my people. That was me. I totally get it. And so those are my people. And then, of course, I specialize in natural anxiety relief. So I get a lot of folks that are like, okay, I'm trying to stay off medicine or lower my dose. Or even though if some people are totally fine being on medication, they just want to see what else they can do to support their health. All fantastic reasons to start a pro-healing approach to nutrition. So please come to the workshop if you are ever able to get more details and ask all your questions. You can leave comments. I do my best to get to those and answer questions, but I would love to see you in one of the workshops if you've got questions. So happy healing, and thanks so much for being here.